Is The Rise of Skywalker good? No. That would be the answer you get from almost any Star Wars fan that watches this movie. However, unlike The Last Jedi, after I watched it, which you can get the full review floating around my head somewhere of that, I think that is the worst Star Wars movie, and this one actually has some good qualities about it. Even with thinking The Last Jedi was the worst Star Wars movie in the entire series, I did find some new appreciation for it when I watched it again for these reviews, and I have much the same remembrance of this movie, but I'm really hoping that more will shine through on this one, because I didn't leave the theater in a boiling rage like I did when I left The Last Jedi, but I do remember leaving this one feeling underwhelmed, but somewhat satisfied. So, here we go. I don't know what the dead speaks means, or why some of these letters are randomly all caps in this opening crawl, but the Emperor Palpatine name drop is quite a big one, considering that he has not been mentioned at all in the trilogy to this point. At least Rey seems to finally be doing some training. A cool intro for Kylo Ren as he murders a bunch of people with the lightsaber hilt. You have to figure out a way to work that in somehow, I guess. But he finds a Sith holocron looking thing, which is actually a Sith wayfinder, and it takes him to a different planet. And we get our first lines of actual dialogue in the movie that come from Emperor Palpatine himself, confirming that he was in fact the big bad guy puppeteering all the events of this trilogy up to this point. A bit annoying just because, like I said, he has not been mentioned in any way, shape, or form until right now. But it's not out of character for him or Star Wars in general. And the respawning Sith fleet keeps the Empire on top. An ominous line from Palpatine says for most likely Rey that she's not who you think she is, already undoing a major plot point from the last movie in the first 2 minutes of this one, where Rey was established as a nobody. So that's an interesting choice to start the movie off on. Regardless, there are some cool things happening and sets the plot in motion, so I'm interested to see where it goes. Our first moment spent with our heroes is a good one, with Finn and Poe playing chess against Chewbacca. I appreciated the small comment of Poe saying, "You're 250 years old, of course you're going to be better than us." Small things like that are fun, and this little interaction between them is really good, and I felt like that was the biggest problem with The Last Jedi, was we got to spend no time with our heroes as a group, and starting off this way is a great place to start, and I really hope to see those relationships develop throughout this movie. We don't waste any time as the gang is thrown directly into some nonsense with picking up a spy info dump, and then they start getting chased by some TIE fighters. There's a cool little chase sequence where Poe starts light speed skipping, which is really neat, seeing a bunch of different little planet scenes and stuff, but it's a little strange that the TIE fighters are sticking with them, since it was a major plot point of the last movie again that they were just able to track them through hyperspace, and they had a device on the capital ship in order to do that, and now the TIE fighters can just do it. So I guess that's a thing now, but it checks out, just building off of the last movie's developments, so sure. We finally get to see Rey doing some training sequences with Leia as her teacher, which is pretty cool. If there's one way to get me to like a Jedi, which they have not really done too much through this trilogy, is to work in some lightsaber throws, which are really awesome no matter who it is. But we still see little bits of Kylo Ren and Vader's mask being worked into this scene, which seemed odd to me, but I guess it's just kind of reinforcing that whatever Force connection that Snoke has set between Rey and Kylo Ren is definitely still there, and I'm interested to see where that little plot point goes as well. So the movie's doing a good job of sprinkling things in the beginning of the movie to make me interested. We get a little bit more interaction between our heroes, and it's an interesting thing to note that with Poe and Rey just meeting each other at the end of the last movie, and some time between those two movies, thank goodness, that it seems like Poe and Rey don't really get along as well as you might like to think they would. But It's a fun little thing that I'm interested to see how they explore that in this movie. And also, Finn and Rey are just as buddy-buddy as ever, but even he is a little bit frustrated with the inaction that she's been taking, or just the training in general, which is a bit weird. You'd think that they would recognize that she needs to develop her abilities, but I guess not. The Resistance reveals with some throwaway lines that Palpatine has returned with some clone stuff and dark Sith magic, and they wash their hands and say that that's good enough of an explanation, and they never talk about it again. However, Rey remembers some stuff from Luke's writings that will guide them to get to the Exegol planet where Kylo Ren found Palpatine, and she tries to go off by herself, but thank goodness Finn and Poe don't let her, and the gang has a mission to do together, finally, for the first time in 3 movies. One of the small things I noticed in this scene that I really appreciated was that in The Last Jedi and The Force Awakens, Maz Kanata, however you say her last name, she was actually CGI in those 2 movies, and in this one she was fully made as a practical effect, and she just looks really good. CGI just never really works as well as practical effects for these things, and I wish that they would recognize that and stick with the practical effects because they just look so much better. I know that Carrie Fisher's passing made the scenes with Leia in this movie really hard to do, but the attempt to force her into it and just reduce her to a bunch of one-liners and kind of corny sayings is not great. They did well with what they had, but I just wish that they could have done something differently, because they just don't ever feel 100% right in the scenes, and they could have easily done Luke as a Force ghost teaching Rey. I'm not sure why they decided to go with the person who literally was not alive to be the mentor here, but it was not the best decision in my opinion. Another small note that Kylo Ren reforges his mask after breaking it in The Last Jedi, so another small but pretty important thing that this movie is undone from The Last Jedi as well. So there's more of that coming. So Finn, Rey, and Poe set off on a journey to a desert planet. Of course, we can't get away from a desert planet in a Star Wars movie, can we? But there's a cool party going on, and Kylo Ren and Rey have one of their Force connections, and they actually touch on a little bit of a thread in The Last Jedi that never went anywhere, with the water droplets on Kylo Ren's hand being a physical manifestation of their connection. And here, he reaches out and he rips the necklace off Rey, and they get that analyzed to figure out where they're at. So that was a cool little nod to something from The Last Jedi that this movie actually does not end up retconning. So good job here, Rise of Skywalker. This does have the unfortunate side effect of forcing us back into the action as the First Last Order chases the team down, but Lando saves the day and has the information they're looking for, which leads us to a pretty cool chase sequence with jetpacks and this terrible dialogue.
They fly now? They fly now!
The classic Star Wars lights and sounds mixed with the colorful paint explosions look really cool, even if it is all CGI, and doesn't really look as good as what I remember The Last Jedi looking like. So I'm not sure what the step back in CGI quality here is from, but I can definitely tell that happened. A few well-placed rockets from the jetpack stormtrooper sends our team flying off of their ships into a pit of quicksand. And as they are sucked below, Finn yells out to Rey, "I never told you something," and that's the last we ever hear about it. So I guess that's just a question that we'll never have answered. So that's fun. Anyway, the sand is somehow thick enough to hold up over a tunnel system that they get sucked down into, but still thin enough to suck them down into it. It's Star Wars. It's fine. It's fun little plot movement stuff, and people get way too hung up on these kinds of things, and I'm not going to. So it's just fun. Accept it, move on. They find the source of the tunnels underneath them, and it's a big snake-like monster thing that is pretty hurt, and he's not very happy about it. But Rey whips out a new force healing power, which would have been really handy any number of times throughout all of the Star Wars movies, and it would really have even solved the entire plot line of the prequel trilogy, being able to heal Padme. So this is a grievous overstep in force power usage, in my opinion. I feel like it just takes any sense of danger out of most situations. It does seem like something a light side Jedi should be able to do, though. So it's not without its place, but it seems to be pretty light here. She does mention that it transfers some of her actual life force, but it doesn't make it seem like it's all that taxing to her to do this. Anyway, it just felt like it just stepped on so many boundaries of force powers, and this is even probably a step above the Leia Supermaning through the vacuum of space force power usage from the last movie, honestly. Anyway, we still have no idea how she got these force powers. We don't see that. It's not talked about. It's definitely put here as a plot device to use for later, and it just didn't sit well with me. In the end, they find the item they're looking for that will discover the location of the Sith Wayfinder that they're looking for. However, it's written in Sith, and they need C-3PO to translate it, but he can't because it's a forbidden language, so they have to go take him to get jailbroken so he can actually speak the Sith language. And holy cow, that is a lot of video game-like errand running to get this plot where it needs to go. As they make their exit, Kylo Ren decides to become directly involved in the fight and flies his ship directly straight at Rey for some strange reason. She does a running backward somersault slash to cut the wing off his TIE fighter, which looks incredible, and it doesn't make any sense, but pointless, illogical, and cool seems like the motto for this movie so far, and I honestly don't hate it. Kylo Ren is completely unscathed from crashing a spaceship at a high speed and gets out to have a little force struggle over a ship that Chewbacca has somehow been captured by 3 stormtroopers and put into. They try to pull the ship back down, and in the struggle, Rey lets out just a little bit of some force lightning and blows up the ship, killing Chewbacca and everybody else on board. So maybe that force life transfer was maybe a little bit more of a unnatural power than a light side one. So we'll see where that goes, but it is very interesting and works into some of the original theory crafting for Rey's backstory before. So it is good to see them actually expounding on her character a little bit instead of just making her a nobody, but at the same time, I wish they would have not undone a full movie's worth of character development for her to do it. Setting that aside, though, they just killed Chewbacca, one of the favorite characters of all Star Wars from many, many people, and they just killed him off screen. Except they didn't, because he's fine in the next scene and just captured. He's on a different ship, I guess. So I really, really hate when movies and TV shows do that character is dead thing just to bring them back like the episode later. It's just the cheapest form of emotional writing to try to get some kind of a feel out of the show. It's like to try to go in on something like that to get the emotional effect without actually sacrificing anything, and it just is really, really cheap. But if you're into that and you're glad that Chewbacca's not actually dead and you just were glad that you had that little emotional roller coaster for 5 seconds, cool, I guess. I just think it's really cheap writing, personally. With Chewbacca dead/captured, the team is forced to jailbreak C-3PO to get the Sith knowledge he has locked in his databanks. In a little bit of dialogue that I thought was actually really funny.
It's a terribly dangerous and sinful act performed on unwitting droids by dregs and criminals.
Let's do that.
While there hasn't been a lot of dialogue in this movie due to the almost non-stop action sequences so far, I have enjoyed the comedic tone of it, and this movie has done a much better job with knowing when to do its comedy instead of placing it in really tense sequences. If this was The Last Jedi, there would have been some kind of joke cracked when Chewie got blown to smithereens. And they haven't done that. They keep the comedy separate from the tragedy and the heavy tone stuff, and that is a very, very refreshing thing to see, as that was probably, outside of the lack of companionship and friendship storylines in Last Jedi, that was my biggest problem with that movie. The gang pushed past Rey's Wookiee slaughter of Chewbacca as an accident, and they decided to push on with the mission together for him. So they head to Kijimi, where Poe has some seedy ties to someone that he thinks can get C-3PO hacked and get the information they need. There's been several little tidbits of information about Poe having a seedy, rogue-like past. It's never really been mentioned before, maybe because he hasn't really had a reason to use it. With the resistance on the ropes here, he's having to dip back into it. I think that I like this, but any backstory you try to give these three characters this late in the third movie of a trilogy is going to feel rushed, but I'm just glad that they are taking the time to try to develop some of that, where the last two movies really gave us nothing other than Finn being a defected stormtrooper. So it's just good to see a little bit of time spent to their backstories, regardless of how rushed it might feel. Poe's old gang finds him and threatens to beat them up and turn them in until Rey just absolutely thrashes them to mesmerizingly to hear their leader say, "I like you now," because of that. And that is the most Mary Sue writing for anyone I've ever heard, and that is undeniable. I don't know how you can't say that Rey is a Mary Sue at this point. You could make the strong argument for that at the end of the last movie, but this right here is textbook Mary Sue stuff, and it's not great. It's just not great. The leader of this group takes the gang to the hacker, who is named Babu Frick, and he's pretty freaking hilarious. Great little alien addition to the movie here. But he gets in there to C-3PO and gets the information they need. But before we do that, we get a little sentimental scene with C-3PO that didn't really make sense to me, as I'm pretty sure they hadn't really interacted with C-3PO outside of like the 30 minutes of this movie. And anytime they did, they were really just telling him to shut up and how terrible he was. So there was no real emotional connection between me, C-3PO, and the gang. So it just really fell flat to me. Just not a great scene. Poe has some more background dialogue with his old flame and leader of this new gang. And while it's nice to see more backstory for Poe, I wish that this time would have been more spent with our three main characters and developing those relationships. Any development on background is nice, but I just would have rather have seen that instead. Afterward, they have a medallion that would allow them to get through this blockade. However, they discover that Chewbacca is actually alive, and they use it to board the ship to try to save him. Boldly, with just the three of them. While Rey manages to force trick some stormtroopers, letting them pass, which checks out. She then splits up after she detects that the dagger that they found was on the ship with Chewbacca, and that they're going to need it. Without Rey, Finn and Poe, they get captured pretty quickly after they find Chewbacca. However, it's really cool to see them run through the hallways just blasting stormtroopers in a pretty classic Star Wars kind of sequence, and the camera work throughout is really good, and it's a fun little scene. Rey finds the dagger in Kylo Ren's room, and they have a little Force connection and chat more about her lineage. This time coming to blows with the physical manifestation stuff between their two locations going on. How does that work? I don't know. It's never really explained, and we're just going to keep running with the illogical and silly but cool premise the movie has put together for us so far. The short duel the two have is unimpressive but still cool, as it's filled with emotion from Rey as she seems to be struggling to admit some bit of knowledge that she already knows about where she comes from, hinting at some kind of a dark line here. Daisy Ridley had not really impressed me with her acting as Rey to this point, but she's doing a much better job in this movie, and I'm really happy to see that. Really, the acting from everybody has been great in this movie, and especially from Adam Driver as Kylo Ren. However, it is sad to see him back in his helmet after taking it off and really getting to see him be the great actor he is in The Last Jedi, which is one of the few small things that The Last Jedi got right, in my opinion. While things are looking bad for Finn, Poe, and Chewbacca as they're about ready to be executed, the spy comes in and saves them. Not because he wants to save them or to help the Resistance, but just to undermine Kylo Ren because he hates him that much. They have really done well with building that hatred throughout the three movies, and I just really liked this small but impactful inclusion from General Hux. Shortly after that, we get the big reveal that Rey is a Palpatine, if you hadn't figured it out already. I really wish that this reveal would have happened with more than an hour left in the entire trilogy, as we don't really get any time for Rey to live in this reality. The only thing that really comes of it is that she swears to kill Palpatine for killing her parents. So, just like in The Last Jedi, the idea that she didn't need a mentor and that she can do everything herself because she's great and super awesome was a bad message to send to the audience. The revenge goal here is not a great goal to have for your main hero either, I don't think, and she never deviates from it. There is no realization that revenge is bad kind of thing, and she freaking gets in there and she murders Palpatine. That is her goal, and she gets her revenge. So a little bit of a weird moral for the main hero to have, I think. With a dagger and the coordinates to the Wayfinder in hand, the team makes their way to the ruins of the second Death Star. The dagger points to a specific spot among those ruins that has somehow held steady through 30 years of what has been noted as a violent and turbulent ocean. So I'm not sure how that checks out, but we have to make sure that we don't spend more than 10 seconds with our characters somehow. We even get a scene with Finn discussing with some other defected stormtroopers that could have been really impactful for the background of his character, but we get that ripped away as Rey has decided to storm off to the ruins herself, and everybody has to leave to go save her. The hints and my hopes for strong togetherness for the characters that was at the beginning of this movie has pretty much all but degraded to nothingness at this point, as they have really even pushed past their own solo stories, as we had seen in the other movies, and they really just dislike each other, even as Finn and Poe have a spat about Rey, and it's just frustrating to see them not devote any time to what I think makes Star Wars great, which is the relationships between the characters. Rey has absolutely no trouble navigating these rough waters and makes her way to the Death Star with no problem at all. She finds the Wayfinder and then gets a little bit of her own Dagobah Sith vision on the Death Star and ends up fighting a dark side version of herself who has a completely pointless foldable double-bladed lightsaber. I am so mad that we get to see a double-bladed lightsaber but not in use by our hero. That would have been the easiest fan satisfaction thing to do, as Rey started the whole trilogy with a staff, and it just would have been really cool to have a hero wielding a dual-bladed lightsaber, and we don't get that. However, she does fight herself, and it doesn't last very long, and we get a weird sharp teeth jump scare from the dark side Rey, but that quickly switches to her fighting Kylo Ren, who is pretty easily mistakable for being part of the Vision, but no, he's real. He's the real deal. He just teleported in there out of nowhere. The fight they have amidst the water is pretty sweet and reminiscent of the Obi-Wan Darth Vader fight from Revenge of the Sith to me. And I'm just really glad to have some cool lightsaber fights in a Star Wars movie again. They're not really all that spectacular, but they're powerful. The way that they swing the lightsabers in this movie are really cool. They put all their weight behind them, and I just really like to see the emotion back in them, like the fight from Return of the Jedi. It's one of my favorites with Luke and Vader just because of the amount of force they put into the swings and the emotion that is attached behind it. So with that in mind, Kylo Ren actually gets the upper hand on Rey for the first time in 2.5 movies, and would have beat her if Leia didn't use the last of her strength to send a message to Kylo to distract him, at which Rey stabs him through the gut and then uses her force healing and just throws up deuces, steals his ship, and leaves him there with his thoughts. There he has a vision, more of an inner monologue with himself, since Han isn't really a Force ghost. But throughout that, he discovers that it is Kylo Ren who is dead and not Ben Solo, and he finally realizes that. I think the most powerful scene in this whole trilogy, and really one of the most powerful scenes in the whole Skywalker saga, is Ben killing Han Solo. And I think it was a smart decision here to piggyback off that as the turning point for his character back to the light side. It seems maybe a little sudden after the extreme dark side he went to in the last movie, but again, I don't know how you're really supposed to recover from the train wreck that was The Last Jedi to make something good out of it, and I think they've done a good job with that here. Near-death experiences will change some stuff, so I believe this. The Emperor sends a message to the galaxy by destroying a planet with one of the new ships. Yes, every ship in the Last Order fleet has Death Star capabilities. Finn and Poe really don't know what to do next, but it's Lando that says they fight, and they do it together, because that's how they won. Because that is just something that this trilogy has done nothing with, so I'm glad that Lando is here to maybe get them back on track. And it does help Finn and Poe kind of reconcile and come to terms and take the fight to them. But Rey is still solo, off in the middle of nowhere. She's decided to become a recluse like Luke. And luckily Luke's Force Ghost shows up and tells her to stop being stupid and making the same mistakes he did. So he pulls the X-Wing up out the water, and Rey flies to Exegol using the Force, which is a cool little nod to give the Force some actual agency here, as it's something I don't think this trilogy has done really much of anything to hint towards. And I'm glad that they did it here finally. I really enjoyed the little Luke and Leia training sequence, but it seemed odd to me to have Leia say that she felt all of this ending with the death of her son. Maybe you could say it was placed as a red herring to give Rey some hope to change that outcome, but when it doesn't change, it really just becomes a spoiler for how the movie's going to end. So I thought that was just odd and out of place. But the CGI here between young Luke and young Leia is pretty cool, and it's just a nice little nod to Carrie Fisher. Rest in peace. The Resistance members pick up Rey's tracking beacon and use it to map a path to Exegol. As they formulate a battle plan, there is a simple throwaway line that I really appreciated, as it acknowledges the fact that the Holdo maneuver from The Last Jedi was complete bullcrap and breaks all Star Wars combat. An average speech from Finn and Poe set the stage for the final act of the movie, and everyone gears up to head to Exegol and make their final stand. It does not start off well, though, as they get hammered by Star Destroyers as they come out of the gate. Finn and the squad of stormtroopers board some ships with the intent to take down their tracking beacon, and Finn has another hint for his force sensitivity as he detects that they're on the wrong ship and they need to move to the main one. Makes sense without the force, honestly, but it's just really sad that we never get to see the force sensitivity lived up to, or really anything that was the potential of Finn's character lived up to. But mainly the fact we never get to see a lightsaber in his hand outside of the couple minutes in the first movie. But there's just so much unused potential for his character that I will never forgive this trilogy for not doing something with him. But he does do more in this movie than he does in the other two, so that's good, as he and the other defected stormtroopers charge and disable the ship pretty easily, honestly. Rey makes her way to Palpatine with no interference, and as weird as it is for Palps to be dropped into this movie out of nowhere, it is cool to see Ian McDiarmid reprise the role, and he is just as fantastic as ever. Super creepy and just does the kill me and I will be more powerful thing that he always does to Rey. He's going to do some cool, weird Sith magic to transplant his spirit into her kind of stuff. And he also does the look at your friends dying trick he does from Return of the Jedi too. So classic Emperor Palpatine stuff, which is always fun to see. As Rey begins to give in the temptation to save her friends, Kylo Ren, no, Ben Solo, comes in to save the day with only a blaster pistol. Luckily, Rey has one for both of them, and she uses her force connection in the coolest way possible by teleporting it to him, which is just really cool. And then he proceeds to destroy the Knights of Ren. It is really satisfying to see him just lay into them, but I was hoping that they would put up a little bit more of a fight, but I guess it just really kind of shows how strong Kylo Ren actually is, and in comparison to Rey as well, for literally no reason, but that is their strength level, I guess. However, Palpatine gives them the fight that they are looking for as he puts them to bed pretty quickly and then starts to suck the life right out of them. The battle in the sky isn't going so great either, but Chewbacca shows up with a galaxy full of ships, and they start blowing up those Star Destroyers. It's a little lame, honestly. Feels a little bit off, but it is heartwarming. And the destruction of those Star Destroyers looks and sounds great too. But Sidious has other plans. With the life force of the dyad absorbed, he shoots a massive lightning bolt into the sky and just starts annihilating everything in another awesome visual. Rey calls on the Force to give her strength again like she did at the beginning of the movie, but this time they actually respond to her and give her the motivation to get up and take the fight to Palpatine with both lightsabers as she walks back his Force lightning on him and kills him pretty easily, honestly. And with him dead, all the ships in the sky start pummeling the Star Destroyers again and quickly turns the battle in the Resistance's favor. And no one really even dies or gets hurt in the fight. Really, the only person that gets hurt of any importance is Rey herself, who used all of her remaining strength to kill Palpatine. But Ben Solo comes in to save the day there and transfers his life force to her and trades places, and he dies instead. I didn't like this, personally. I thought that Rey should have been the one to sacrifice herself to kill Palpatine and, end the Palpatine line, right? So then it would have been Rise of Skywalker. Then Ben Solo would have been inspired by Rey to go on to rebuild the Jedi Order or do whatever it is Ben Solo wanted to do. Still not Rise of Skywalker, I guess, but, more sense than Rey Palpatine becoming Skywalker. Anyway, regardless of how that turned out, them kissing at the end was weird. Just like in Last Jedi with Rose and Finn, I never really got romantic vibes between the two of them. So it just made me do the classic head tilt, when I saw it, which is my dead giveaway that something was not right with the scene. The remaining Last Order ships crash and burn, and everyone leaves happy and healthy. Poe has a little thing with his old rogue flame. Lando either hits on a much younger woman or infers they're related in some way, maybe. And most head-scratchingly, Rey buries the 2 Skywalker lightsabers in the sands on Tatooine, and then takes the Skywalker name for no reason. She hated Luke. She was trained by Leia, whose last name is Organa. Was in a relationship, maybe, kind of, with Ben Solo. I don't know how she comes to the Skywalker name as the one that she's going to stick with, but here she is. Anyway, she does do a igniting of her lightsaber that she has made for herself, which is a pretty sweet gold color. However, it's still not double-bladed, and again, just a huge missed opportunity to not have that lightsaber be double-bladed. How cool would it have been to have a double-bladed lightsaber ignited with the twin sunset on Tatooine? That would have been a really cool ending visual, but can't do it. No double-bladed lightsabers for us Star Wars fans. Can't do that. General consensus on this movie is that it is one of, if not the worst Star Wars movie due to its breakneck speed and use of MacGuffins to move the plot along. And while I fully agree with those sentiments, I think that this is a pretty good action movie set in the Star Wars universe, and that's fine. I think it's definitely better than Last Jedi. And my blasphemous statement is that I think the first Star Wars movie is the worst Star Wars movie, so I think it's better than that. But it has really good acting in it, maybe some of the best in Star Wars outside of Revenge of the Sith, which I think is the best movie. I think this is the best acting. The typical Star Wars lights and sounds are all there and look great. CGI is a little, maybe just above average in some spots, but that's not too much of a critique. And it does a nice job of wrapping up this trilogy. Now, if this is truly the end of the Skywalker saga, I think it does a pretty terrible job of wrapping up the entire Skywalker saga. So something tells me we're going to see more of these people in 10, 15 years or so. I've said this enough, but the lack of any real kind of character or relationship development between the main heroes in this trilogy is its major downfall. And that's something that the original trilogy did super well, and the prequel trilogy did okay, at least between Obi-Wan and Anakin, and it didn't have any of that political world building that the prequels did so well. So it really is just in this no man's land of not being a great character story, not being a great story in general, and then also not being really rooted in anything. So it's really just this kind of anomalous, vague shape of a Star Wars story. And I think for that reason, this is the weakest of all the trilogies. And I just really was very disappointed with everything as a whole. There are definitely parts of this trilogy that have great stuff in there, and the potential was really high for it. It just was really let down by its overarching guidance. There was no plan really from start to finish, from what I understand, and that was a big missed opportunity. And you can really tell whenever you examine this as a full trilogy where that ball was dropped. So we just have to look forward to the next Star Wars trilogy if we get one, and know that it can't get much worse than this. So there's always that to look forward to. And that's it. The entire Skywalker saga reviewed by me in its entirety in way too much detail and depth. It's been quite the journey, and I just want to thank anybody that's come along the ride with me. It has been a lot of fun, and I've really enjoyed just diving into something that I really love, and just examining the crap out of it. So I do plan on getting to Rogue One and Solo in the near future as well. So if you like this video, give it a like, and dislike if you didn't. Subscribe so you know when those other two videos come out. After I do those two, I have some other stuff I would like to get to, but it'll be in the future quite a ways, I'd imagine. So we still got some more Star Wars content to get through. And if you want to tell me what you liked about Rise of Skywalker, if you hated it in its entirety, or just the sequel trilogy in general, make sure to leave a comment down below. And again, just thank you guys so much for watching. And until next time, I'll catch you later.